do this long enough, you realize that you got a whole lot of stuff that you're hanging on to. You got a whole lot of stuff. And the more you can just let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, the more you can feel, the more you can see the market, the more you can sense what's going on, the freer you are to accept what is actually happening. It's all about living in the present. But most of the time it's hard. And it rips your heart out, and you've got to figure out how to keep belief in yourself. But I wasn't chasing when I lost that money. I was trying to heal. Ultimately, your trading success is going to have more to do with you figuring out how to heal yourself from those negative limiting emotion than learning how to trade an 820 EMA cross or whatever it is that you're looking at on the screens.
Welcome to the Alpha Mind podcast. Today's guest is Tom Canfield, a retail trader for 20 years and someone many people will recognise from Financial Twitter or FinTwit, where he comments regularly on the challenges of trading and markets. Known by the handle @Canny4, Tom's posts are insightful, honest, frank and full of nuggets of wisdom. We have been trying to get Tom on for some time as a guest, but it was following a tweet he posted on Jan 1 this year, which led us to reach out again to try and get Tom on with extra zeal. The tweet was a thread where he told how 3 years earlier he had suffered a dramatic drawdown and the deep, lingering emotional pain which went with that. The thread went on to talk about the impact this had on his trading and the fight to recover and the redemption which subsequently came his way. The real value for traders listening to Tom, as well as having his fascinating and thought-provoking insights, is for them to realise that however hard and challenging they find trading, and whatever dark places it may take them to, is completely normal and very common for the job. Painful as it is something that every trader I've ever known goes through at various times. Rarely, however, do you hear people talk about this. And this is why this is so helpful and valuable to hear Tom really share his feelings and pour his heart out about this instance and the situation around it. Now, before we start, a quick word about our podcast partner, the Society of Technical Analysts, the STA. At Alpha Mind, we believe learning, education and continual improvement are all aspects of trading that are vital and should be part of every trader's process. It is therefore important that when we partner with people involved in educating traders, that they are high quality and reputable in everything they do. The Society of Technical Analysts are exactly that. As a non-profit organisation, they have no motive other than to help people grow and develop and improve themselves. And their learning and educational programmes in technical analysis have become the gold standard for the industry. Their outstanding home study course and the accompanying diploma programme provide a degree of education unparalleled when it comes to learning the art of technical analysis. The home study course is based off the same programme that the STA have been delivering for many years at the world-renowned London School of Economics. And it is written by some of the world's leading figures in the technical analysis industry. Alumni of the STA diploma programme have gone on to work in many of the world's leading investment banks, asset management firms and hedge funds, and many other top financial market institutions. Like anything that is high quality and with huge value, their programmes do not come cheap. However, we are delighted that the STA are offering listeners of the Alpha Mind podcast a £100 discount or local currency equivalent. Now, to find out more about this, visit our blog page by Googling Alpha Mind blog or enter alphamindblog.blogspot.com into your browser and go to the page link STA Home Study Course. There you will find a discount code and further details of their program. Now, on with this week's podcast, and do try and stay right to the end. The nuggets keep coming right until the final moment.
Well, welcome to this week's Alpha Mind podcast, and we're delighted to have Tom Canfield with us. Tom's had a 20-plus year journey of financial markets, of trading, starting off with a business school into Kidder Peabody, and then running through all sorts of different ventures. But he's certainly faced gains, and he's certainly faced pains during that trading journey, and mindset has been a real staple method for him to manage himself in that journey, and thus we're so interested to have Tom on the show. So, Tom, welcome.
Thank you.
Perhaps tell us more.
Where do you want me to start?
Oh, listen, the trading journey. We got traders listening, so
the trading journey. Yeah, I came out of I came out of business school, went to work for Kidder Peabody on the bond fixed income side, sales. Kind of got addicted to a lot of the math and the numbers because I was working with mortgage backs and CMOs and slicing all those tranches up, and I just was fascinated by it. But I also came to grips with the fact that I love the math, but I hated the people because as a salesman, you're sort of holding two phones between a trader in New York that is more or less completely inhumane and a portfolio manager at a bank or savings and loan or an insurance company that's pretty much the same. And your job's to make sure that those two are able to communicate because they can't communicate with each other. And that kind of wore me out. It was a lot of fun for a while. But I bailed and decided to go do something crazy and start restaurants. And that sort of filtered me back into trading because as I started having kids, running restaurants was too difficult. There's too many other things going on at home also. And the internet came along during that time. And I realized, hey, I can maybe stick my neck back out and see what's going on here now that I don't have to deal with other people and I can just kind of do it myself. Flipped over to the equity side and started trading. Took me about 3 years to find a methodology and a system that I liked and something that made sense. I blew up about 3 smaller accounts in the process. But once I got it, I slowly kind of chipped my way up. Thankfully, I had a father who supported me and loaned me some money when I sort of went, I ran out of all my stuff. So he kind of staked me and gave me enough to get going. And that accountability for me was huge. A lot of the sloppy shit that I was doing and for lack of a better term, which seems to be pretty popular these days, my YOLO trading that I was doing in my early days, I just said enough of that and stick with what works, stick with what's consistent. I found a method that made a lot of sense to me. And for the next 20 years, I basically did that while I raised my kids. So I've shifted now. And I think I've been pretty public about that on Twitter, that I was a swing trader for a long time. Basically a momentum swing trader. And I've always wanted to day trade. I've always been fascinated with day trading. I'm actually always been way more compelled to day trade than to swing trade, but swing trading was what I could do to control my emotional imbalance, for lack of a better term. Every single time I tried to dive into day trading during my career, I blew up. I said, okay, I got to stop this again. I'd fund a little account, go over and mess with it, be terrible, and get out of there and go back to swing trading because that paid the bills. And it allowed me to be a hell of a lot more objective because there's an awful lot of emotion and subjectivity that creeps into day trade. I guess a little over a year ago, I made the switch again because my kids are all out of the house. And that part of my life is the responsibility, the financial responsibility, all of that has eased up a lot. So I don't feel like I have a gun to my head. And the maturity of, I guess, doing this for almost 25 years finally caught up to me. And I have sort of learned how to more often than not manage my emotions enough so that I'm actually having some pretty good success now as a day trader. And I think one of the important things is I love it. Like it's finally, I've always wanted to do this and I can do it now with enough emotional control to make it work. And I can't wait to get up in the morning. Whereas swing trading got boring for me, got tedious. It's, I don't know, we could dive into all those different things, but it sort of ran its course for me. And I was finding that I wasn't excited about my job anymore. And it started to show up in my performance. And whatnot. But I'm thankful for, because I don't know that I could day trade now without the 20 plus years of experience as a swing trader. Because I'm still watching the screens every day and you start to see the rhythms and the patterns of how markets markets move and how stocks that you want to trade move on an intraday basis. And now I'm just applying all that stuff, but I'm just doing it on the day trade side, and I'm going, I go to cash at the end of every day.
Okay, well, thank you for the intro there, Tom. I'm fascinated hearing what you're talking about here, because there's a lot of things you said which almost seem to run counter to, for want of a better word, the old wives' tales about trading.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Well, and I don't buy into those.
Good. You shouldn't, because it's all horseshit. I'm sorry. It's just, there's so much that's written about what trading is and how it's supposed to go, and the natural progression and all that stuff. And it's all garbage. It's all garbage. Partly because it's just every single human is completely unique. Their personality structure is unique. Their lifestyle is unique. Everything that goes on around them is completely unique. And so therefore, how you trade and how you get where you're trying to go is a unique discovery process.
Oh, yeah, completely. We've done an episode last year where I talked about a psychometric I use with traders, where I uncover their risk personality. And one of those risk personalities is excitable. And I'm guessing you might fall into that category.
No.
Just a hunch?
Yeah, probably so. Well, it depends. How do you define that?
Oh, they love novelty. They love excitement. They love danger. They love the buzz of flying too close to the flame a little bit, that sort of thing. And
I don't know if that actually describes me. I guess there's a certain aspect of that exists in me.
Yeah.
That thrill seeker side, that adrenaline junkie. But at the same time, I also find that I also live with and carry a lot of fear that kind of throttles a lot of that. Like my brother will jump out of airplanes. I won't ever do it. It's just, that's so there's
a balance. I mean, they're not the whole way. And when they are the whole way, they're dangerous.
Very.
But they kind of go, that's why we say to the flame, they get close, but then they get too hot and they pull back.
Right. And that would explain, the accountability of having a family and having, 5 people that are looking at you every single day, expecting you to do your job, does wonders for keeping that throttle right where it needs to be.
Yeah. The point I say to people is that they often come to me and they tell me they're excitable and they're told they've got to be, the other way around, like an air traffic controller. And I say to them, no, you don't. That's how you are. And that's how you've got to work. And you've got to embrace that.
Yeah.
And yet you need to have control in there. You need to throw some control in there.
Right.
Because that's what you're lacking. But actually that's your strength.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This idea that you mustn't be excitable in trading. I say that's where you find these trades that no one else finds.
Right.
Where these insights come from. You will lean into the market at times other people won't lean into it.
Right.
Because they're waiting for 8 or 9 ticks of a box and you're spotting it after 2 or 3.
Right.
And that's where they make their money.
That's where your edge comes from. I'm a very feel-oriented trader, and I've got to have my emotions like on me full to feel that. And to be able to really sense that. When I start trading too mechanically, I run into all sorts of problems.
Yeah, because you're not competing where you've got an edge.
No.
It's to me, it's that bit, everyone has an edge. Every single person's personality, somewhere it gives them an edge. And there will be conditions and times and types of markets where that suits that person. And that's where they've got to be leveraging in that.
Yes.
Of course, you've got to have risk management wrapped around that, money management. There's got to be an element of that because, that's the handbrake on the car, right?
Right.
You don't have a handbrake somewhere or a safe airbag, something like that, because you're also probably more likely to find ones that, to find those spots. But at the end of the day, those are the guys that they lean into the market and they will often find the big ones somewhere along the line.
Yeah. And it's, and you rely on those. My day trading style is very, it's dull and it's consistent. I don't hit home runs. I'm very much of a scalper by nature. with respect to this, but within the areas that I really smell out that I like, I'm very aggressive, and I don't think twice about it. And so when I'm right, it covers a lot of little tests and trials that don't work out. But part of that is just you build conviction through just watching the screens day after day after day, and you keep seeing these patterns repeat themselves. And you start in certain markets, you just know what you're going to do, and you don't really think too much about it. You just do it. And then when all of a sudden it stops working, like this week, I've had a great month. It's been 4 or 5 months of a lot of really, really good trading. And I was up a ton this month, actually on par for one of my best months ever. And this week hit, and I was doing the same stuff, and I was just getting my ass handed to me. And I was like, wait a minute, I guess things are changing. You start looking into the things a little bit more, and you start seeing certain things that tell you that maybe it's time to take your foot off the gas a little bit. And so even though I lost money this week, I'm okay with that because I measure everything monthly, and I still am having a very good month, not having a record month, but having a good month. And I'll take my licks and the education that the market has changed, whether people want to believe that it's changed or not. According to the way that I look at things, there has been a change in tone because the stuff that I typically do that viably works in a fairly healthy, slowly uptrending market aren't working right now. So you back off and you reassess. But that loss, those losses are basically your clue. Like I can gauge where we are just based on how things are working for what I'm doing.
That's a quarter of a century of experience there.
Yeah. I don't know how. Yeah, I mean, it was the same thing when I was swing trading. Yeah. You lean into trades, you lean into setups. They keep responding for you. You build this big equity upswing, and then all of a sudden, the same plays are stuffing, and they're not working, and they're faltering, and you're eating shit on the other side. And you're like, okay, you got to step back and assess. But I don't ever go out at the high of my equity. I just don't. I always have to drop back down for me to realize I got to take my hands off.
Again, that's fascinating for sort of, I'm guessing there's a lot of people who are either young to the game or relatively new to the game. And if anyone's listening, I pretty much, anyone under 5 years I consider as relatively new to the game.
Yeah.
And this
at least 5 years.
Yeah, at least. I was trying to be conservative. But this is stuff that you only can really ever learn through experience and through time and through failure as well.
Right.
And failure is a constant companion on these journeys.
For me, it's been a very constant companion. When things are good, I can kind of become a monster of my own creation. And so I often need the failure, like I needed this week. Like it's got me settled again. But failure teaches you on so many different levels. It teaches you a little bit more about how the market works. It teaches you a little bit about how you always need to be humble, how you always need to have perspective and all that. But ultimately, failure teaches you how to recover. And I think that's what ultimately, I walk around and people are like, well, what's your edge? Well, my edge is that I can get the shit kicked out of me and I can come back. That's my edge. And knowing that allows me to step into every single day with confidence, because I've had to beat back some serious drawdowns, both in life and specifically in trading. And there's sort of a process that I've learned how to go through to reestablish myself, reestablish my confidence, and slowly grow back. And I'm always amazed at how quickly the equity comes back once you let yourself settle in, get to neutral, and sort of, I mean, for me, I take myself through, I almost have, it's like I've got a process. The only one that didn't follow the process was the one that I got public about, that you and I have talked a little bit about with the big $500,000 XIV loss. That was a whole nother animal that for a long time I didn't know if I was going to be able to recover from. It took so much out of me, because that was a lot of money for me. I mean, that was a big chunk.
This might be a good time to just sort of perhaps introduce that tweet you did at the start of this.
That's fine.
To the audience, which I have kind of ready on my phone, and when I saw this, it took my breath away. Perhaps more so that the fact that you actually talked about it openly rather than what happened itself, and that you were willing to reveal this to the FinTwit world.
Well, I mean, it took me 3 years to talk about it. But I feel like it's important stuff, because there's so much that's put out there about how easy this game is. And there's so much that's put out there about how it's just, like we talked about, you just kind of go numb and be non-emotional and just do your thing and everything will be just fine. And it's misleading. This job is so hard in aggregate. There are windows where it's really easy. Not very big windows, but typically there are little bitty windows every once in a while where things are really, really easy. But most of the time it's hard. And it rips your heart out, and you've got to figure out how to keep belief in yourself. Because that's really what it is to me. It's all about finding a way to believe in yourself and knowing that you can find a way back when those things happen, because you don't think about that shit when you're making a lot of money. When you're knocking it down week after week after week, you're not thinking about anything. You're thinking about where you're going to spend the money, what you're going to do. You're drawing your graph about, well, I'm making X number of dollars a week, multiply that times 52. I'm doing it. I'm crushing it. And you don't ever build in any kind of, oh shit, I just lost 6 weeks worth of profits just doing something really stupid and not being willing to let go of it. And you go through enough years and cycles of that, you start realizing that you need to budget for your own, idiocy within that equity line that, you want to draw, or whatever. Anyway, that kind of sidetracks what you were going to talk about. So go ahead.
All right. Well, I guess what I wanted to do is just bring some context to this by just reading out the tweet, okay, so our audience know what we're talking about. And this was a tweet which you posted on the 1st of January this year. But you said, after trading profitably for a living every year since 2000, in late of January 2018, I lost 500K in an hour in the XIV blowup. It destroyed me mentally. I couldn't think clearly for 18 months. Couldn't stop trying to get my money back, which just made it worse. Finally, I shut it all down, scared shitless. I couldn't trade anymore. I had to protect what was left of what I had built over the previous years. The village of idiots in my head had somehow taken over the castle. And there's a whole thread there, and I won't read the whole thread. But this is great if people could go up there, and maybe I'll sort of retweet this on our blog, the Alpha Mind blog, to go so they can see the whole thread. But perhaps could you tell us a bit? Firstly,
listening to you read it back was actually, I'm sitting here going, like, that was hard to listen to be perfectly honest with you. Like, if I'm not like fighting really hard, I could have broken down crying right there. Because it's like, it was a big deal.
I think it's important to sometimes reflect on these things, actually, and share this story. And I think sharing that to the community as you did, I think, I guess talks about the fact that, pain is going to happen, and actually we do need to have a lifeboat of sorts that we can reach, a sort of a mental lifeboat. And actually, if we have sort of the peace of mind of knowing that we've got something that will eventually help us sort of bounce back and recover, then it does allow us to carry on, I think, at some point. But of course, there are times when we do have to step away, and it's knowing when to step away and realizing that stepping away is actually an option. Because there are times when actually, and I've seen it from many people in the past, that there's only so far you can go with something that's capitulated against you. Actually, it is time to perhaps, go and do that hike around the Adirondacks or whatever, right? Just to sort of get some perspective back, but to then come back. So I think the big message is that despite what happened, you still came back. I think you kind of perhaps modified your model to eventually become a day trader, where you kind of then regain control of your time and time for doing the important stuff, right? Which is, I think, as we know that Tom's got 4 foot of snow outside his back door and wants to go and get in there straight after this podcast, and that's his. It's
my escape. It's actually what I did. Ironically, it's what I did after I lost that money. Like, I took a few days off, and I'm like, I got to take a few days off. I mean, I was devastated, but then I said, all right, this is what we do. We go back in, and I couldn't see, I couldn't read, I couldn't feel the market. I was jumping in and out of stuff all over the place. I didn't trust anything. I was just, and I lost a little bit more, not just minor, but, and that's when I jumped out and said, I gotta settle out for a little while. And I took off and I went skiing just all by myself. I told my wife, I said, I gotta go. I gotta go. And, I got on an airplane and flew out to Colorado, and for a week I just skied by myself. And then I came back, and sat back down at the desk and still felt the same way. And so I just and it was the middle of the winter there in St. Louis at the time was where we were, because that's where I was until we got here to Idaho. And even when I got back, I didn't feel any different. And then they got a huge snowstorm out in Colorado, and I said, I'm going again. I still can't. I can't sit around here in front of my computers because bad things are going to happen. I got to get away from them again. And so off I went again for another week. And God bless my wife, who just supported it and said, go for it. Do what you need to do to clear your head. And when I came back the second time, I felt a little bit better, at least more settled. And I started to have some success, but it was this, because I was scared. I don't know how else to put it. I now had this wet blanket of fear that was just draped on me as a result of that. And every single time I started having success, I bump, okay, just going back. All right, things are working. As soon as I started to feel that success, my brain just flipped and said, now go get your money back. And I would oversize and dive into stuff, and then I would just bury myself again. And so it was just this boom, boom. And I kept doing it, probably 6-8 months worth, because I couldn't get out of me that I wanted that $500,000 back, and it wouldn't stop showing up. So I had to take my hands off of everything again and really start to do some soul searching as to what was going on, and that was when I actually started, and I talk about it in the stream of that tweet, where we went out to California to visit my son, And sitting there on my laptop every morning, I'd just wake up and sort of watch the market open, and I would just sort of just casually trade 100 shares of Apple just to try and feel it, And all of a sudden I couldn't believe how well I was, just because I didn't care. At that point, I didn't care. And so I had to get down to where I was beat up enough that I didn't care. And I had to trade small enough that, okay, if I just keep blowing up these Apple trades, I'm not going to lose very much money. I'm trading 100 shares. And so it didn't matter to me. I just was trying to trade my feel. And all of a sudden I started realizing I'm doing pretty good here. And that was really the genesis of what I do today, because I started to realize I have complete control. I don't care anymore what happens overnight. I don't carry that bias into my morning. Like I'm long a bunch of stuff and the market gap's down and I'm having to stare at a $25,000, drawdown on my swing trading account. And I can't think rationally about where the market is because I just want to get my, it's that mindset. And with day trading, all of a sudden I'm like, I don't have to care. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And for me, that was insanely freeing, because now I just had to control the flow of what was going on that day. And for whatever reason, as a result of everything else that I'd been through, and all my market experience and emotional swings, it finally fit this time. And slowly but surely, I started to build to kind of start carving out a method and looking at other stocks. And just in the last, and I guess one of the reasons that I tweeted it was because I went on about a 5-month string where I basically, from August through end of December, where I made $500,000, and I'm like, there it is.
Got it back. There you go.
I got it back. And I wasn't even trying. At that point, I wasn't even trying because I'd finally let it go.
Yeah.
Which is a big part of it. You have to, once you take a loss, and it's not going to happen the next day, if it's a big outsized loss, but at some point in time, you have to take a deep breath and go, that money's gone. It's not mine anymore. It's not being held for me, And it was honestly just all of a sudden this realization, because I had let it go, that I was like, I looked at sort of how things had gone, because I really kicked into gear in August. I was doing well. And then I started increasing my size. In August, I really started to notice a huge jump in my equity. And so from August to December, I was like, well, let's look at this section. And when I saw how much it was, I was like, son of a bitch, look at that. And I think that was one of the things that sort of inspired me to kind of share that roller coaster and that experience, because as big of a loss as that was, because that was, for me, it was a huge chunk. And part of the reason that it was a huge chunk is because I sometimes make the mistake of living forward and what is it that I'm building towards. And so you get this picture in your mind of what you're trying to build towards. And sometimes it's motivating, but sometimes that can be destructive because it causes you to start chasing. But I wasn't chasing when I lost that money. I was trying to heal, which is a whole second part of because people behind the scenes and were saying, how'd you even get yourself in that situation in the first place? Which is a fair question. It's a great question. And to be perfectly honest, I was in so much emotional pain at that time because my youngest had just torn his ACL for a second time. And so his hockey career was over, which was very promising. And it broke my heart. And I was raw. And because I had a lot invested in his hockey and all three of my boys' hockey. And he was the last one, and he was the one that was so motivated at the time and whatever. And so I had really poured a lot into, to his development, and to have that happen just for us twice, which basically made it not possible. I remember just being so broken by it. And I think it was subconscious, but I planned that trade. That XIV trade was totally planned. I was waiting for that moment when I felt like we were at the bottom. And then I bought the most ridiculous amount that you could ever possibly, because I wanted the market to say, you're okay. Everything's going to be okay. And it laughed at me, basically. I mean, that shit happens. And I wasn't going to blame anybody. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on today with GME and all the hedge funds and all that stuff. And it's not too dissimilar from what happened with XIV when they basically cornered the market on those VIX futures after the market closed. You got to own it. I mean, you got to, just like those guys that are getting their butts handed to them, they got to own it. They went in unprotected and they're getting creamed. Lesson learned.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place, and shocks turn up from totally unexpected places that with the best modeling and the best sort of thought process around it, you just can't predict. And guess your story of changing an environment, shifting to West Coast, and then almost a renaissance in your trading style. It was a renaissance in your trading style, just to an appropriate way of entering the market. In fact, it's the model approach for anyone entering the market. Just manage your risk, keep it controlled. Don't overtrade, don't overplay your risk.
I still overtrade, but it's controlled. Everything is controlled. I can have a really bad day trading, and it's nothing compared to what I've experienced before. And so part of it, you're numb to certain numbers at a certain point, which is, I don't know how good that is or not, but it's like everything's manageable. And I feel so much more control, which at this stage in my life is really important. I'm not looking for big home runs. I'm not looking to, I want a consistent income with a quality of life that I can enjoy with my wife for the next 30 years. I love doing it. I just have to keep it in its proper place.
Yeah, and you're still going to get some failures, right? And
this week. I mean, this week was a failure.
But you've got method to rebase yourself, right? And I think that, as I think we talked about earlier, there's no one solution for all of us. We're all so super different that you can read books on it and then you pick up somebody else's method of recovering, and actually it's highly unlikely to be the method for you. You just need to start with understanding yourself and realizing that dysfunctional trading may suddenly start to happen because actually you're just not managing yourself in the process.
Right. And I think everybody, I know I learned chiefly from one or two people, and then plus my own exploration, and you're stealing a little bit of this and you're stealing a little bit of that and you're stealing a little bit of this because that makes sense. I don't get why he does that, so I'm just not going to do that. And that's okay to do. There is you have to be very careful when you're learning from somebody not to put them on too high of a pedestal, because just because it works for them doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. You can take out what's the meat of it, and now you got to adapt it to what's logical to you. And it's a really tricky process.
This is the hardest thing for people to get when they're learning.
Yeah.
And I put out a tweet last week, which is one of my favorite quotes. And it's from one of the Market Wizards books. And it's an interview with Richard Driehaus. And he said, a trading philosophy is something that cannot just be transferred from one person to another. It's something that you have to acquire yourself through time and effort.
Yeah. That's genius, because there is no one size fits all. There just isn't. Even if you're a breakout trader, which is basically what I was as a swing trader, there are so many different nuances within that style, and what your risk tolerance is and how you want to enter that market and what makes sense to you and whatever, that it's all so unique and so specific, and we all have our own certain type of eyes that we see the market with. And, people look at me like I'm crazy because I literally work my ass off to be as dumb as I possibly can. And I get a lot of hype about, my be dumb, follow price little phrase that I came up with once. And, but for me, it's really true because I'm so emotional. I can be so influenced. I am so competitive. I have so many different things that go on inside me that I have to protect myself from myself. And the best way that I know to do that is to basically put myself in a bubble so that I don't know what other people are doing. I don't know what they're saying on the news. I don't know because I attach to all of that shit. I don't have the ability to take in information and just see it for what it is and just let it sit there and be neutral about it. I'm not neutral about anything. And so the less I bring into my view, the less I bring into my mental world, the better I trade. Because then I can just focus on, well, what is actually happening on the screen, reading the tape. Because bias is so easy. It is so easy to form based on what your opinion of a political situation or what's going on here or what's going on there or what you think should happen or what you want to see happen.
Opinions get way often, don't they?
Yeah, and you don't even know that you have them.
No.
But so for me, it's like the dumber I can be. And it's just, I say it like that for effect. But the dumber I can be, the smarter I actually will be in terms of reading the tape. And that's my own personal style. And I have so many people who ask me about certain things and I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know. I've never heard of that.
That's the essence of it, because when I worked as a trader, and I'm going back to the 80s and 90s, and I started out and I was working at banks in the FX space, and people outside would come up to me and go, "Do you think I should buy dollars now? Do you think I should sell sterling? For their businesses, their imports, their exports?" And I go, "I don't know."
Yeah.
And they go, "How can you not know? You work in the forex market." And I go, "That's why I don't know."
Right.
If I knew, I wouldn't be working in the FX markets. I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere with my yacht offshore.
Right. Because the market does whatever the market wants to do, and people don't seem to understand that it's kind of a forward pricing mechanism. So the market kind of knows things before you actually know them. Because if you think about it, these people that run billions and billions of dollars have these staffs of like tentacles that are in every single corner of the world. So they have all information. They have information before the news people have information. They have information before the public has information. And so all the decisions that are getting made by the people that control the market, they're dealing with a level of information that we just don't have access to. Well, I don't know that I'm saying that I think people know what's going to happen next. That's not really necessarily my point. I just know that they have a much better, let's take Apple, for example. Apple announced great earnings and whatever, and it's selling off now. And most people would think, well, because it's good earnings. But what's happening is those guys are making decisions. There's so many different reasons why big money is making decisions, whether to accumulate or distribute a stock, that are their own reasons. But they have a better sense for what Apple's going to look like 3 months from now, what Apple's going to look like 6 months from now, what Apple's going to look like from a business model standpoint, and their cash flows than I do. They're having meetings with those guys all the time. They're always talking to them. They've got metrics they're measuring and whatever. So they're making decisions based on a fuller set of data than I have. And so basically what I have to do is, my point is I try and follow whatever it is that big money is trying to do, because that's what moves the market. To say that they know what is happening next from a market standpoint, I'm not, I agree with what you're saying from that standpoint, but they're making decisions with their own positions to accumulate or distribute based on a certain set of data that they have about a given company that goes way deeper than anything I could ever acquire. And I guess, and so I'm just trying to read, you can read that flow, and then you can sense when that flow has started to shift a little bit.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Society of Technical Analysts, the STA. The STA Home Study course is the gold standard in technical analysis education. We are delighted to offer listeners and the Alpha Mind podcast a £100 British or local currency equivalent discount on the full cost of the home study course. Go to the page link at the top of our blog page to find out more about this. Google Alpha Mind blog or type in alphamindblog.blogspot.com. Now back to the podcast.
But our ego is also what helps us nail big trades too. So it's a double-edged sword. And because sometimes without ego, without conviction, without a high sense of confidence in what you see and what you're doing, you don't take advantage, you don't take advantage of those really clear opportunities in a big way. And a lot of times those are the things that really can swing your profitability. So can ego get you in trouble? Yeah. But ego also, at least for me, my ego helps me capitalize on big trades when they show up. You know, I got to dance with who brought me, and I'm an emotional guy, and so I've had to figure it out. But quite honestly, I wouldn't like this job if I couldn't do it with emotion, because I'm just an emotional person. I like my emotions. I like to feel my emotions. I like to be out there. I like to be in touch with myself and feel everything. And so if I can't do this job within the nature of how my character naturally operates, then I don't want to do it. At the end of the day, I'm not going to be any good at this thing if it's not fun. Fuck, if you're doing this, do it because you love the challenge and it's fun and it's interesting. Yeah, you get the shit kicked out of you every once in a while, but so what? Get back on the horse and let's go. That's how you learn and grow and make this thing work.
And I guess that's what you did after that trade. I mean, you know, it sounds like, as you said, it ripped the heart out of you.
Yes.
But you came back.
I always knew I was going to. Like, there was a part of me that never let go of the fact. I just didn't know how. For the longest time, I was like, I can't do what I used to do. My brain won't let me. I'm too scarred there or whatever. But this is all I know. This is what I do. This is who I am. So it's like, somehow I'm going to figure this out.
What did you find out about yourself during this time?
A lot of things. I'm way too attached to money. I spend way too much time worrying about the quality of life I want to give other people. Money, like I wanted to fix my wounds from something else in my life with money. So I found out some of the negative aspects of my relationship with money and how it was jilting me and tilting me. But I also found out just how damn tough I am. And how I actually do have a pretty deep core sense of belief in who I am. And I think through the process, I realized how much I like myself. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but I'm at peace with who I am. And I'm pretty damn good at what I do. I had a bad day. I had a bad hour. And I need to be very careful not to let that wipe out 20 years of really good shit. But for a while I did. And I had to just kind of get away from it enough so that I could remember that I'm pretty good. I just need to change some things, and maybe I'm ready to step into this different era, this renaissance of changing how I do things that will fit me better as I am today. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but yeah,
I love it. You know, it sounds like there was like a redemption.
Oh, huge.
I got to love myself. I mean, this is something which every trader's got to realize.
We could go into a whole nother podcast about my daddy issues. Seriously. I mean, it's been a huge influence in both positively and negatively. And my trading exploded when I finally let my pop go. let go of some of the petty stuff that I always, that kids carry about their dads, especially sons. I got 3 of them. We always joke about it because I've been pretty open and honest with them about my struggles. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm setting aside money so that you guys can go to counseling and stuff because I've probably fucked you up too. So, it's just, but I love my dad. I'm so proud of the stuff that he's done, but I'm also so competitive that I've been like, he retired and now he sits around and trades, drives me up a wall. And he would keep trying to tell me how to trade like him when I was going through during that 3-year period where I was kind of in no man's land, and he's making money like crazy because it doesn't matter to him because he doesn't care because he's just playing with a little sandbox or whatever. And it was really screwing with me. And so it wasn't, and then I started checking out and saying, Dad, just go away. Just leave me alone. I don't even want to pay attention to you. And then, but it wasn't until right, like the last week of July that I like it was a choice. I just said, you know what? I love my dad. I'm proud of him, and I'm not gonna play this game anymore. I'm just gonna let him be better than me. That's okay.
And paradoxically, that's about when you started making
and that's
money.
when I took off. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like I still remember it.
This is all I'm hearing is letting go.
Yeah.
Letting go of this, letting go of that. That's where you've got to be. You've got to be free.
And when you do this long enough, you realize that you got a whole lot of stuff that you're hanging on to. You got a whole lot of stuff. And the more you can just let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, the more you can feel, the more you can see the market, the more you can sense what's going on, the freer you are to accept what is actually happening. It's all about living in the present instead of holding on to the past or chasing something in the future. And it just, letting go is a big deal. And it doesn't have a damn thing to do with what's on that screen. And that's what's so amazing is people don't realize that when they're struggling, it's not because they're not good traders. It's because they've got other stuff that's coming in. The village of idiots are controlling them, as I have coined them from time to time. I mean, it's all mental space.
It's total. I mean, this job is total. It's it is amazing when I talk to people and they tell me I've taken some time off and I'm back. I'm back making money again, and I can't believe I didn't take time off. I can't believe I didn't see that. I can't believe what I was doing to myself. You just get lost. You go into this kind of dark, downward spiral. When you're in it, it is so hard to escape.
If you keep going to the market every single day, the spiral is going to continue because you've somehow got to break the connection.
Yeah. I think it's right that the other point to this, of course, is that actually turning up and screen staring as you're sort of not even trading, but just staring. I mean, there's some people I know that have traded from home over the last few years that have now changed jobs because ultimately they lost money. They tried to regain it. They didn't. They weren't smart enough to change their models. They just tried to stay with historically what had always worked, but the game had changed and they just hadn't seen it change. And all they did for months on end was just stare at a screen and and become like inward, and dysfunctional as a consequence of that. And I think that the new methodology around the way that you're now trading, even on the intraday. I mean, you're probably not trading a day, right? I imagine you're probably trading a segment and then thinking I'm done, and then letting go of the market.
Right.
Because there's also the letting go of being present in the market. That's another part of letting go, right?
And most of my active trading's in the morning, in the first 2.5 hours of the day. And then after that, it's like, that's just got to be good enough.
Yeah.
Because that's when most of my success and my best reads are in that first 2.5 hours. And so you've got to learn to just let go of where you're at, and which is hard because especially if you're doing well and you just want to go, well, I'm really feeling it today. So you just keep going. And before you know it, you've pissed back half your profits or all of them, whatever. And so you have to learn good enough is good enough. And some days you're going to have big outsized days. You don't know when they're going to show up, but they're going to come if you do your stuff right. And some days you're going to not do so well. And you just have to be cool with that. And that's really hard.
Yeah, big discipline. Yeah.
It's really hard. I had to shift. Like, I was always tracking by the day for a while I was day trading. And I realized that was messing me up. And I finally went back to everything that I was doing swing trading, which was, I don't care what happens other than how to do this month. So right now, I lost a lot of money this week by and large. But the 3 weeks prior to that, I made a lot of money. So on the month, I'm still having a good month, and that's all I care about. And that's all I'm allowing myself to think about.
Yeah. And of course, having these brief periods of trading you do in the morning, whether you win or lose, that stepping away then allows you to almost rebase yourself and reconnect with yourself.
Every
and just
single time. Yeah. I go out
right?
hours, or when I was home, I'd go and take a run or whatever. And it's amazing. You completely set yourself free from whatever you were attaching to.
So important and very much neglected, I think, across the industry.
You have to figure out how to distract yourself from yourself.
Yeah.
And you're because we as traders we have addictive personalities. We have compulsive personalities, and we can get locked in to price action or whatever, or making the money and all of that stuff. And you've got to figure out how to, like, literally give your brain and your spirit a vacation from all of that wired emotion, even if it's an hour. It's amazing what it does. That's why I read a lot. I read novels. I don't read self-help books. I don't read how to trade books. I read novels because it's escape. And that's, I find all kinds of different things to do where all of a sudden I realize 2 hours has passed and I have not thought once about the market.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tom, hearing all this is amazing. And you've got the benefit of 20 years and various blow-ups and that. And I'm, again, conscious that this audience, a lot of them will be young guys who maybe are listening to some of this, and maybe some of it's perhaps not quite landing because they haven't had enough experiences yet.
I understand that.
What would you like to have told your younger self, that now that you've had all of these, that would have really helped them?
There are no straight lines. Expect less. Believe in yourself more. Expect less.
Right, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get it totally.
And when you go through a run of success, get the hell away. Don't run away when you're getting your ass kicked, unless it's really bad and you've got to, like, re-find yourself. You need to run away when it's good. Because when it's good is when you can spiral mentally and emotionally. Because I would venture to guess you've got a lot of young guys that maybe they're all doing a lot of these fun things right now and making a lot of money, or to them's a lot of money. And I think I tweeted this out. Statistics say that 95 to 99% of these guys are going to lose everything that they just made over the course of the next 6 to 12 months because they don't want it to end. They don't want, they're going to keep forcing their way of doing things, even when that way doesn't work anymore. So, I've been asked this before, and, like, I'm supposed to say, have balance, find other things you're interested in. I'm not wired that way. I am now. I use it as a tool now because I know how destructive my personality can be if I just uber absorb in what I'm doing. But in my early years, if I had too much balance, I wouldn't be successful. I mean, I was 18 hours a day for a long time because it takes that much. I can't even remember the tweet, but it was that I talked about the work and how you have to love the work. But you have to love the work, not the money. And the money is a byproduct of loving the work. And I I think so. If I had something to tell myself, I got too money focused way too early. But part of that is because I had life expenses. I started this gig when I was when we were having babies. I mean, I had 3 kids in diapers, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to read a 5-minute chart. So it was, I felt that pressure. Don't quit your day job just because you're having success in the short run as a day trader, folks.
It's one of those paradoxes that you go into the job for the money,
right,
and then you fall in love with it. And that's eventually when the money comes.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you have to kind of let go of that money. And when it becomes too important, when you have to earn money to put, bread on the table, and I'm not being flippant there, then you lose focus and you kind of, it becomes hard.
It's not that you forget about the money, because we're all obsessed about the money. That's not realistic. It's just quell that obsession enough. And make sure that you love the day-to-day challenge of trying to play the game and figure out, the puzzle.
I was talking about this with someone recently who he works for a guy who's made hundreds of millions in the market over many years, and he's now got this trading firm. And he says the guy comes in every day and trades still, and he's probably the most stressed guy you've ever seen. And he's saying to me, why would he be like that? He's got all this money now, okay, and yet he comes in and he's like, on edge. And I'm like, because he loves what he does.
Yeah.
And he cares what he does. And he wants to win every single day he comes in.
This is what we do. I can't fathom me ever not doing this. I could see slowing down, but I can't. Like, I love going and sitting at my desk and, okay, what happened overnight? What's going on? What's the vibe? What's setting up? I love that. I look forward to it every day, and I'm bummed when I don't get to do it.
Sounds like it makes you feel alive.
It does, especially doing it the way that I'm doing it now. I mean, what made me feel alive when I was younger was raising my kids and coaching hockey and being a dad. And, oh, by the way, trying to figure out how to make enough money in the market to be able to fund all this fun. And now I've had to shift, but now I love what I do every single day. Can't wait to get there. Even if I'm going to get my ass kicked, it's still fun.
Amazing. Brilliant. We can see your passion when you talk. There's no holds barred. What you think, what you feel. And again, it feels like you're trying to educate people as well and trying to help people.
Yeah, but it's cathartic at the same time for me. Like, I have all these thoughts in my head, and I really enjoy. I love to write, and I love getting my thoughts out and on paper, on the printed page, or whatever you want to call it, the digital media. And I don't know if I'm helping people or not. I'd like helping people. I guess it's an extension of my coaching, because I was a coach for 15 years, and I love trying to get people to see things in a little bit different way. And I like being bluntly honest. I actually think that's one of the greatest forms of love that you can express to people, is by just being bluntly honest sometimes, because they don't need you to blow smoke up their ass. And we got plenty of that. And so it's been fun. And I've met a lot of people through Twitter. I get my share of trolls and whatever. I mean, it's sometimes I don't like it, but you deal with it and you move on. But I know that people appreciate getting an honest view of what this thing is all about. And there aren't many people that are willing to expose that side. And I've been pretty successful, and I'm very thankful that I've been able to make a living for my family doing this. I don't have anything fancy to show for it, and that's okay. Other than I got a great life that I love. But it's not been without a lot of pain and a lot of ups and downs and hard knocks and self-introspection and all that stuff. And I just don't feel like that gets exposed so that people really know what they're signing up for when they're trying to take this thing on. But the one thing I wanted to say is, and it's like this job, you're going to deal with a lot of sense of despondency and shame. And, Stephen, you said before we even started that you wanted to get into forgiveness, and we never really got our heads around it, but it's a big issue. And you're going to deal with a lot of these challenges to your sense of self that ultimately your trading success is going to have more to do with you figuring out how to heal yourself from those negative limiting emotions than learning how to trade an 820 EMA cross or whatever it is that you're looking at on the screens. The screens are going to fail you. You're going to fail yourself. You're going to have all of these horrible emotions that are sitting inside you, and your success is really ultimately going to be dependent on your ability to overcome and move through those to a strong enough sense of belief in yourself that you're able to just continue to carry forward. And so for a lot of the younger guys that maybe are listening to this, that maybe haven't been through a lot of those emotions or aren't allowing those emotions to be felt yet, they're coming. And you need to at least write down that I got to figure out how to deal with some of these things, because if you just sort of let them sit there, they will destroy you.
It's, you're right. We did talk about it. I didn't mention it because it kind of felt like we talked about it a little bit when you talked about the letting go of the thing with your father and that. And perhaps we didn't label it and give it a name there.
Sure.
It felt like there was some forgiveness happening.
Oh, yeah.
At that point. But it is so true. And, you mentioned so many things. You got to like yourself.
You got to like yourself, man.
You're going to be, and I'm not talking about being arrogant. If you're an arrogant prick, you're not going to make it in this career. That's one thing. But I'm talking about, you are going to beat yourself up so often in this job. The biggest enemy will be yourself, because you will beat the hell out of yourself up.
I'm rooting on myself sometimes. It's just brutal.
And you are. And we all are. And, you've got to come back in the next day having, called yourself the biggest idiot ever put on this earth and beating yourself up. And then you've got to come in the next day and somehow believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you don't believe in yourself, you're screwed already.
You're screwed
before you walked in the door.
Because if you're coming to the market so that the market can make you feel better about yourself, you're dead. You got to come in already liking yourself and already feeling good about yourself and already believing in yourself, because the market's there to fuck you over and try and take that away from you. Yeah.
And you can't fool yourself. You cannot say, I'm great, when you don't believe you're not. You've really got to work with that.
Yeah.
You've got to say, actually, I can do this. Actually, I am good. Yeah, I was an idiot yesterday, but you know what? Let go of that. Forget that. We all have bad days. We all have bad weeks. We all have bad months. Hell, we even have bad years.
Yeah.
This job is not, like you said, a straight line. And, you've got to understand that's what happens. And you can have times where you're going to do everything right and you're still going to lose money.
Yeah.
And that's the other side of this game. It is a random process so often. There's so much randomness out there.
Right. I mean, that happened to me this week. I didn't mind a lot of my trades. I let them get away from me a little bit, because letting them get away has been productive for me for 4 or 5 months now. But I don't begrudge it. It's just part of the random process.
You've got to deal with that. You've got to back yourself. So many people over the years who I've coached, I've said, at which point in your career did you really trust yourself? I'm not just talking about, I thought I could do this, but unconsciously you trusted yourself. You knew to a high probability you're going to come in and make money the next year. And I'd love to just ask you that question.
I don't think I've ever gotten to that point, to be honest with you.
That's great for the audience to hear, because
I know what I'm capable of positively, and I know what I'm also capable of negatively. So I'm very careful not to fully trust myself.
And that probably keeps you humble. That probably keeps you grounded.
It does. It does. Because I've seen myself do some really amazingly stupid things. And so I always know that's like the lurking beast that sits inside me. And so I believe in myself wholeheartedly, but I don't fully trust myself. No.
Well, listen, on that note, I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Tom, it's just been heartwarming, to just hear the story, the honesty behind it. I think for those that are listening to these types of podcasts to guide themselves through this mess of markets and understanding that if you're treating it as a fad, just jumping onto this sudden moment of madness and treating the market like a fad is a massive mistake. You've got to really buy into the whole concept of just understanding what this thing is that you're getting involved with, putting some proper process around it, knowing that you've got a huge chance, 95% chance of actually failing, and realizing that failure is going to happen as part of the process from time to time. And if you don't look after yourself and treasure yourself to actually be bothered about having a method of resetting and recalibrating and bouncing back, then the chances are you won't bounce back. And actually, it's really, really important if you want to commit to doing this stuff that you build in this methodology that we've gone into great depth discussing today, because otherwise you risk just becoming another dysfunctional trader. And there are lots of people in the past that have just dissolved into losing everything they've got by not paying attention. So listen, Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in, and we truly hope you found this week's podcast inspiring and memorable. The Alpha Mind podcast is a joint collaboration between Mark Randall of the Mark Randall Consultancy and Stephen Goldstein of Alpha R Cubed Limited. Mark and Steve both offer outstanding coaching programs which help traders develop in the vital mental, emotional, and behavioral aspects of trading and investing that are vital in helping people to explore and improve how they are so that they can more effectively monetize the systems, methods, and ideas they use to find value in markets. To know more about these services, go to markrandallconsultancy.com or alpharcube.com, or email Mark at ceo@markrandallconsultancy.com or Stephen at info@alpharcubed.com. You can also get in touch with them and follow them on social media. Stephen's Twitter handle is at AlphaMind101. Mark's Twitter handle is at AlphaMind102. You can also connect with them both on LinkedIn and join their AlphaMind LinkedIn group. You can also sign up for our new AlphaMind newsletter by going to the link or the sign up page on the AlphaMind blog. You can find that at alphamindblog.blogspot.com or just Google AlphaMind blog. Thank you for listening, and stay safe and stay well.